Now, number 2 in our series on military procurement, economics correspondent Paul Salmon looks at the guns used in combat.
The M16 semi-automatic rifle. With its shorter version, the M4, it's the gun of our troops in combat. The hats for the sun, by the way, the earmuffs for the noise. Jim Sullivan helped design this rifle during the Eisenhower administration.
50 years ago.
50 years ago.
We started on it 50 years ago this month.
That's 1957, the year the Soviet Union launched Sputnik. In the half-century since, computers shrank from houses to handhelds, polio was cured,
The Eagle has landed.
man made it to the moon and Mars, and what kind of advance was there in our combat rifle?
They're right exactly where they were when we gave them the M16 in 1960. They haven't advanced an inch.
Meanwhile, the competition, says Sullivan, the Soviet-designed automatic Kalashnikov AK-47, is in its third generation as the AK-74.
That AK-74 out-hits the M16 by 2 to 1 on full automatic. And the reason that there was 100 million AKs made wasn't to equip the Russian army. It was to give to our third world opponents so the United States can't win ground wars anymore. It's the rifleman and his rifle. That's what decides ground wars.
The rifle Sullivan would have his own son use in Iraq today? The opposition's.
He should have an AK.
Really?
Yeah.
In fact, says Iraq vet Todd Bowers,
if I'm going to a rifle range with my friends, I'm more than likely going to reach for the AK-47, A, because I know it's not going to jam, and B, because I know it's going to function in a proper method.
the M16, it turns out, is still plagued with problems it experienced from the outset. A finicky device, it has jammed from the jungles of Vietnam to the deserts of Iraq, the suburbs of Northern Virginia.
Just last month, I was actually on the rifle range to qualify with the Marine Corps, and my weapon jammed twice while I was on the range. And this is in the most simple conditions. This is laying in the prone position on a knee, not violently shaking the weapon, and it still jams under those conditions.
Still jams 50 years after its birth. So why hasn't the U.S. stayed on technology's cutting edge in rifles? Well, says Sullivan, the rifle is a low-ticket item, around $600, and big-ticket items get the lion's share of the money and attention. Big contractors, the bulk of the business. But more important may be the sheer size of our system for procuring weapons, a function of what President Eisenhower dubbed the military-industrial complex, a system that, said Ike back in 1961, already worked against techie tinkerers like Jim Sullivan.
Today, the solitary inventor, tinkering in his shop, has been overshadowed by task forces of scientists. Partly because of the huge costs involved, a government contract becomes virtually a substitute for intellectual curiosity.
Though he's now 74, Sullivan's intellectual curiosity is still his long suit. In the years since the M16, he's debuted a new rifle, something called the Ultimax, to rave reviews. He didn't make it in or for the United States, however, but the country of Singapore. He's also invented a 100-round magazine for the Ultimax, the M16 and M4. It's being used by England, Germany, even famously neutral Switzerland. But the U.S. Army
doesn't use this thing.
They don't use it now?
No. I mean, our soldiers are still limited to 30-shot magazines. That's what they're trying to fight with over there in Iraq. This is emptied in full auto in 3 seconds. It takes him about 5 seconds before he can fire the next shot. That's just like a giant malfunction, okay? During that time, the man's helpless.
Now, of course, we asked the Army for a response to all this. But instead of an interview, they sent us what they call their M4 talking points, which don't address the new Ultimax or 100-shot magazine at all. What they do say, in a survey of soldiers who fought in Iraq last year, 89% reported satisfaction with the M4, just a shortened M16, remember, and only 3% experienced a weapon stoppage that caused an inability to engage the enemy.
I see.
Moreover, when we were shown new Army technology at the Pentagon recently,
Sent the feed back to the soldier.
Meatballs and marinara.
we saw some areas in which change was clearly embraced, the results quite tasty. Brigadier General Mark Brown runs the procurement system for what our troops wear and carry. He also cares about what they eat.
This is Hoppin' John, this is bacon and black-eyed peas.
Hoppin' John is one of 24 different meals ready to eat, MREs. 4 of them vegetarian, all in packs that heat themselves with a 3-year shelf life.
That's pork carnitas. Muy bueno.
Yeah, well, this is really good, actually.
It is. In the mountains of Afghanistan, it tastes really good.
Especially compared to what food in the field used to be, the notorious K rations. Even M16 critic Todd Bowers loves this program.
Our country has the most outstanding meals ready to eat possible. I won't lie to you, I ate one on Saturday. I had an extra one and I had it for dinner.
So the military procurement system can sometimes work wonders, it seems, for our troops at the front. And the military insists it has made improvements to the M16 M4.
This is what all infantrymen are equipped with today.
3-star Marine General James Mattis.
Very well. Okay, you notice the rail here that allows us to put on various different appliances, whether it be a flashlight. Here's a way of putting a red dot on an enemy and firing based on that. Here is a scope, a 4-power scope that every infantryman has the option of putting on based on what kind of combat he's in. This is a much more capable weapon system.
But Winslow Wheeler, who's been a staffer for 4 senators, 3 of them Republican, says a recent study shows the M16 add-ons may do more harm than good.
The more you hang extraneous stuff on the gun, the more likely it is to jam.
It's reached the point of absurdity in these sight systems. A walking man can't use sights very well, so you fire from the hip, full automatic in the assault, and that's where the word assault rifle came from.
But, says ex-Marine Colonel Jim McGee, who's worked inside the Pentagon and out as a military contractor, the procurement system is interested in sticking with and improving a product it knows and understands.
Procurement guys, they want a long-term contract.
Why?
Because that's their metric for success. The fact that technology changes, that's not their issue. Once it's in procurement, like the M16 or the M4, long-term program. Been here forever. Hell, been here when I came on active duty, the M16. It's been improved incrementally over time, but it's a 41-year-old weapon. Come on, guys. You know, you telling me something better is not out there?
5.56 millimeter.
In fact, back in the 60s, the M16 itself was considered such an outside-the-box product that the Army resisted it. So stubbornly, it actually sabotaged it by using the wrong gunpowder. Gunpowder it had been using for years and didn't want to give up. According to a famous House report in 1967, the Army's resistance, quote, bordered on criminal negligence. 40 years later, it's the M16 that represents the status quo. Stability. The main drive isn't to come up with something new, says Sullivan. Instead, it's simply
all the thousands of people that are, you know, in there working on these programs and spending hundreds of millions on, all of them don't want their job to be threatened. I think that's it. They want program longevity, to never have a conclusion, to always get, you know, follow-on contracts to keep these programs alive.
So, at the end of the day, say Sullivan and others, the military procurement system has become so big and bureaucratic, its very nature may be to resist innovation. The result? Troops with critical products, like the M16 M4 rifle, that hasn't changed much in 50 years.
Paul Salmon's next and final report will look at a vehicle designed to protect troops from IEDs and other attacks.